Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Administrator, for being here. I wanted to ask you about the methane rule. EPA has an effort to control dangerous methane pollution from the oil and gas industry. The common sense rule asks operators to put our natural gas resources to productive use rather than wastefully leaking them. I support the rule because it'll boost energy supplies, reduce air pollution, including smog, air toxics, greenhouse gases. And the estimated benefit of capturing methane emissions from the oil and gas industry is $2 billion annually. Do you support this rule? And if not, without it, what would you do to reduce wasted natural gas?
Congressman, I think historically, the way the agency's dealt with methane has been part of a VOC approach, where volatile organic compounds, as we've regulated the VOCs, methane has been part of that bundle. What happened with that particular rule is the EPA, for the first time, pulled methane out of the bundle and regulated it separately. We haven't taken any action on that, as you know, as far as the substantive rule itself. There are compliance dates that are forthcoming that have been extended, and that's really been the focus up until now. But I think there is a meaningful debate and discussion that should occur about whether the rules should be focused on a bundle approach, a VOC approach, or whether methane should be pulled out. As you know, methane is very valuable. Companies don't like to flare methane because it can be captured and used in other ways, and it's very marketable, if you will. And so, I think having a rule in place that incentivizes that and ensures that we approach it pursuant to the statute, I think is something we should look at.
Okay, so you've said, I think you and Secretary Perry have both made appearances on CNBC, and on March 9th you said that carbon dioxide is not a primary driver contributing to recent climate change. And that said differently, that you said CO2 is not the only contributor to climate change. Do you agree that methane, nitrous oxide, and other greenhouse gases are air pollutants?
Absolutely, absolutely, and are more potent actually than CO2.
Right. So
methane is more potent than CO2, as you know, in that regard.
So I have to say, it seems to me, I knew you emphasized the importance of process before, but if the object is to reduce methane, nitrous oxide, and other greenhouse gases, what would be the strategy, whether as part of a bundle or as not part of a bundle? How do you think we should go about controlling and reducing those gases?
I mean, I think that distinction matters, though, Congressman. I think that as we look at the statutory framework and how methane should be regulated, the question whether it should be part of the bundle is a significant question, and so that's what we're evaluating. Again, the focus in the first 10 months has been on those compliance dates, and as you know, the rule is in effect presently, and that's been the primary focus. As we go forward, the discussion and the focus will be on whether it needs to be a part of the bundle or not.
So I understand the procedural point you make about whether it's part of the bundle, but whichever avenue we take, whether it's part of the bundle, how would we go about reducing the emissions of methane gas?
Well, you look at the wellhead, you speak to companies with respect to the flaring practices that have gone on historically, and there are best management practices and best practices that can be deployed by companies to ensure. Again, there's not an incentive for companies to waste methane. It's something that can be used, and it's very valuable. We need to recognize that and encourage and incentivize that.
Right. I think one of the things we've noticed is it has many benefits. The price of natural gas has gone down, so perhaps the incentive to lose that cheap gas isn't as great as it might be to actually force the control of it. But you mentioned a couple things like looking at the wellhead and so forth. Substantively, do you think that what's in the methane rule is the right kind of approach to deal with that?
I think, Congressman, it's probably best that, in a rulemaking process, it's important that I don't prejudge outcomes, and I think that what will be important is taking comment on those issues as we go forward.
Do you intend to start from zero, or do you intend to put out the methane rule for additional comment? How do you intend to
it's yet
land
to be
this plane?
It's yet to be determined.
All right. Well, I would say I think it's we made a lot of progress on it. I think that there's a lot of understanding within the industry that natural gas can be a better burning fuel than some fuels we use, but you have to control methane to really get the benefit out of it from a from a climate change standpoint, and that's kind of where we should be.
Thanks, Congressman.